The bitter wind carved through the towering pines like a blade through silk. Snowflakes descended in endless cascades, wrapping the wilderness in a blanket of pristine silence. Ancient evergreens stood as motionless guardians, while the world seemed to hold its breath. Deep within the untamed lands near Bear Creek, a solitary horseman pressed forward against the tempest. Samuel Cross sat hunched in his saddle, his weathered frame wrapped in thick buffalo hide. His mount, a sturdy bay mare, picked her way carefully along the fading path. Samuel's face bore the marks of countless hardships, weathered like old leather, with eyes that held depths of unspoken pain. A Winchester rested across his back, a Colt at his hip. Yet he rode not for conflict or duty, but seeking only sustenance and solitude. Fresh markings in the pristine snow caught his attention, wheel ruts deep and erratic, still visible despite the falling snow. He urged his mare forward, following the trail around a cluster of boulders until the scene revealed itself. A covered wagon lay twisted on its side, canvas torn and frame splintered. A single draft horse lay motionless in the traces, its life already claimed by the merciless cold. Samuel dismounted, his boots sinking into the deep snow as he approached. Then came a sound barely audible above the howling wind. He moved around the wagon's rear and stopped short. There, nearly buried beneath the white blanket, lay a young woman wrapped in a threadbare shawl. Her skin held the warm copper tone of autumn leaves, her long black hair tangled with ice crystals. Blue-tinged lips moved weakly as consciousness flickered behind heavy eyelids. "Don't abandon me," came her whispered plea, raw with desperation. "I'll give you whatever you desire." Samuel stood frozen, his breath catching. The girl trembled like a wounded dove, her arms clutched tight against the cold. Scratches marked her face, and one foot was bare. She appeared cast aside, forgotten, by fate itself. Not my concern, he thought, taking a step backward. The snow fell heavier now. Left alone, she wouldn't survive another hour. But her voice echoed in his mind those desperate words. "Whatever you desire." He turned toward his horse. But other voices filled his thoughts. A child's laughter, a woman's gentle song, then screams, gunshots, flames. His grip tightened on the reins. He spun back around. The young woman remained there, now dusted with fresh snow. Her mouth moved soundlessly, and briefly her eyes opened. Meeting his gaze directly, "Please," she breathed, barely audible. Samuel exhaled sharply. "Damn," he muttered under his breath. Moving quickly now, he knelt beside her. She didn't flinch at his touch, barely conscious. He lifted her carefully. Her lightness startled him. Her skin felt like winter itself. "Stay awake," he commanded, his voice rough with concern. "Don't you dare die on me now." Her head fell against his shoulder as he carried her to his mare. Mounting awkwardly while cradling her proved challenging. But soon they were moving toward his cabin, hidden among the trees a mile distant. Each step felt like a test of fate. Inside his modest dwelling, Samuel kicked open the door as snow swirled behind them. He placed her gently on the narrow bed near the stone fireplace, then worked frantically building up the fire, removing her frozen garments, wrapping her in warm furs. She moaned softly, eyes still fluttering. He trickled whiskey between her lips, and she coughed weakly but swallowed. "Good," he said quietly. Settling back on the floor, hands resting on his knees, he studied the fire's dancing flames. His gaze drifted back to her face. "Cherokee," he murmured. "Mixed blood, perhaps." He asked no questions about her origins. Such matters held no importance. Only one thing was certain: he'd heard that desperate voice before, in another life. During another blizzard, when he'd been too late, too weak, too absent when needed most. This time he'd been present, and he wouldn't walk away. The storm raged 3 more days. Within the humble log structure nestled beneath the towering pines, time moved at the pace of falling snow. The hearth burned continuously, battling the cold that seeped through every gap in the timber walls. Shadows played across the worn floorboards, across the rifle positioned near the entrance. Across the figure resting on the bed, Luna Stormfeather lay wrapped in thick pelts, barely stirring. Her skin had regained some warmth, but fever still gripped her like invisible chains. Her lips occasionally moved, sometimes crying out, sometimes whispering in a tongue Samuel recognized but couldn't speak. Cherokee words. He remained nearby. In silence, whittling wood with a small blade. His eyes frequently returned to her, unreadable. On the second night she muttered something that made him pause. Agidota on Aliski and V, she whispered. Samuel's brow creased. Understood enough. To know these weren't random words, she was calling for someone. Family, perhaps? He didn't inquire. Rising, he walked to the wooden chest at his bed's foot and opened it slowly. Inside lay a carefully preserved blue cotton dress, worn but lovingly maintained. He lifted it, staring for a long moment. It still carried faint traces of jasmine and wood smoke. He exhaled deeply, approached Luna, and gently draped the garment over her form, tucking the edges securely. The gesture was careful, reverent, like placing wildflowers on a sacred site. She didn't. Stirred by the fourth morning, the fever began breaking. Samuel was stoking the fire when he heard her shifting. He turned to find her eyes opening, squinting against the soft light. Her lips were parched, but she managed to whisper, "Where am I?" "In the mountains," he replied. "This cabin belongs to me." Her brow furrowed as she attempted to sit up, wincing. With pain, he moved closer, offering her a tin cup of water. She accepted it with trembling hands. "You rescued me," she said. "I did. You didn't leave me behind." She noticed the dress covering her, fingers tracing the fabric gently. "Is this yours?" "No," Samuel said, pausing. "It belonged to my wife." Luna looked up sharply, then lowered her gaze. "I'm sorry, I didn't realize." She took a careful sip then, leaned back against the wall, breathing laboriously. A lengthy silence passed. Then she spotted it, the scar on his forearm. Pale, jagged, unmistakably old. A blade wound, perhaps several. She nodded toward it. "Were you in the war between the states?" He pulled the chair closer, sat down, eyes never leaving hers. "I was involved in many conflicts," he said. She studied him longer, then asked softly, "Did anyone search for you?" His expression remained unchanged, but something in his jaw tightened. There was no one left to search. Her eyes remained on him, reading his silence, and he allowed her to. That night, when Luna finally fell into genuine sleep for the first time, Samuel stayed by the fire. He glanced at her occasionally, and though unspoken, something long buried within him stirred something he'd believed had died with the woman whose dress now warmed another soul. Not pity, not yet trust, but something dangerously resembling hope. The snow had melted enough to reveal mud and fresh tracks. Late one morning, as the chill clung to the trees but sunlight finally broke through, Samuel heard the distant sound of approaching horses. Not the casual rhythm of a rancher's ride, this was military, precise, coordinated. He stepped outside. Eyes narrowed, rifle cradled in his arms. 4 men in Union blue rode up the trail. Worn uniforms, rifles slung across shoulders. One wore an officer's insignia and carried himself with the arrogance of authority. His name was Captain Morrison, and he tipped his hat without warmth. "Morning," he said. Samuel nodded once. "Captain name's Morrison. You Samuel Cross?" "I am. Mind answering some questions?" Samuel remained still. "Ask away." Morrison gestured behind him. "We're pursuing an escaped prisoner. Young Cherokee woman, mixed heritage. Name's Luna Stormfeather." Samuel's jaw clenched, but his voice stayed level. "Unfamiliar name." Morrison's eyes scanned the cabin. "We have reason to believe she's in this vicinity. Fled from custody 3 days past. She's connected to known Cherokee militants. Her father, Soaring Eagaloo, might know him as a peace negotiator. We call him a traitor." Behind Samuel, inside the cabin, Luna crouched low near the fireplace, holding her breath. Samuel stood firm. "These lands are quiet. Nobody ventures this far without losing something." Morrison dismounted. "Mind if we search the premises?" "I do. Mind." The soldiers exchanged glances. Morrison stepped closer, lowering his voice. You served with the Confederacy, didn't you, Cross? Records show you rode with Captain Blake's raiders. Spent time at Rock Island Prison. Lost your family in the Cherokee Uprising. Samuel said nothing. You've buried enough ghosts, Morrison continued. This girl isn't worth joining them. Samuel's stare was cold as the ridge behind him. You're welcome to search the forest, he said, but this cabin is mine. Morrison studied him. But something in Samuel's stillness, that subtle aura of danger beneath his calm, made the officer hesitate. We'll return, he said finally, remounting. If she's here and you're harboring her, you'll burn alongside her. Rode away as soon as they disappeared. Samuel stepped inside and secured the door. Luna stood slowly, her face pale. You knew, she said. Samuel didn't answer immediately. He walked to a corner, lifted an old rug, revealing a hidden trapdoor. Beneath it, a ladder descended to a narrow root cellar, lined with stone dry and dark. Get down there. Luna stared. What is this place? Samuel's voice was flat. Somewhere they won't discover you. Luna descended the ladder without another word. As she reached the bottom, her foot struck something solid. Wooden markers half buried in the earth, 3 of them small, weather-worn. She looked up. Samuel's voice caught. My wife, my son, my daughter. Luna closed her eyes. He said nothing more, just closed the trapdoor, securing it with an iron latch. Outside, the wind picked up again. That evening, as Samuel stood outside chopping firewood, Morrison returned alone this time. He dismounted slowly, arms crossed. Certain there's no one else up here? He asked. Samuel didn't blink. Just me. Morrison looked around, then up at the smoke rising from the chimney. Harsh place to survive, he said. Lonely, cold. Spirits favor such places. Morrison tilted his head. Do you believe in spirits, Cross? Samuel looked him straight in the eye. It's only the ones I've laid to rest. Morrison let out a dry laugh. Then he leaned in slightly. If you're hiding her, she'll bring nothing but death. You understand that? Samuel's voice was quiet, steel-wrapped. Only things living out here are snow and spirits, and they don't speak. Morrison stared a moment longer, then nodded once and departed. Down in the root cellar, Luna sat in darkness beside the old markers, her fingers tracing the carved initials. She understood now. He wasn't saving her because she was innocent. He was saving her because once no one had saved them. The frost had begun loosening its hold on the mountain. Each morning, ice on the stream behind the cabin cracked a little more. Snowbanks diminished, and the sun lingered just moments longer above the pines. Spring remained distant, but it was approaching, and so was Luna's recovery. Her strength returned. Gradually, she began walking without support. She helped tend the fire. She even smiled once when Samuel accidentally knocked over a pot of coffee and cursed quietly. But there was something else. Every afternoon when Samuel would ride out to check snares or hunt, Luna would slip outside. Just beyond the clearing, hidden among the trees, she would break small branches and arrange them carefully in deliberate patterns, barely noticeable to most, but they weren't random. They were signals to anyone from her people who might still be watching or searching. She left for such messages over a week. On the 5th day, Samuel spotted one. It was subtle, a row of pine twigs bent and secured under a flat stone. No animal had created it. No wind had placed it there. He stared at it for a long while, then glanced into the trees beyond. Then he turned and walked back to the cabin. That evening, while Luna prepared herbs near the window, Samuel sat sharpening a knife at the table. The silence was heavy. He didn't look at her. Finally, he spoke. You think they'll come? She stopped moving. Who? He set down the blade. Your people. You're leaving markers. She turned, her eyes suddenly tight with fear or shame or both. He didn't raise his voice. You think I won't help you? She searched for words. I had to try. I couldn't know if you would. You've been here weeks, he said quietly. I fed you. Hid you, nearly got myself hanged, and still you don't trust me. She looked down, her fingers trembling now. It's not about you, she said. It's about the world I've known. Men who say they'll help, who smile while they steal. I've witnessed. Too many promises melt like snow. She paused. I've never trusted anyone who lived long enough to earn it. Her voice broke on the last words. Samuel rose slowly, walked to the door, and picked up his coat. He didn't speak. She watched him leave without slamming the door. He returned an hour later, carrying a small pine board and his hunting knife. He walked past her without a word, knelt near the cabin's central support beam, and began carving. The sound of blade against wood filled the room. Luna stood and approached slowly. On the beam, faded but readable, were two names already carved, Clara Cross and a heart. Beneath them, Samuel now carved a third, Luna Stormfeather. He finished, wiped away the wood shavings, and stood. I buried the first two, he said. That's why their names are here, to keep them close. He looked at her. I don't plan on burying you. She blinked, stunned. I don't know what to say. You don't have to, he said. You're here. That's enough. Her voice was barely a whisper. No one has ever carved my name in a home before. He nodded once, then returned to his seat. And for the first time since her arrival, Luna sat beside him, not across the room, not watching from the corner, but close enough to feel the warmth of the same fire. The fire crackled, casting dancing light across the snow-dusted ground. Samuel and Luna sat beneath the trees behind the cabin, a few feet apart but sharing the same mountain stillness. The moon hung low over the ridge, spilling silver light across the earth. Wolves howled somewhere in the distance, mournful and wild. Luna pulled her blanket tighter. The wind carried a bite. You do this often? She asked quietly. Samuel nodded. Helps me remember who I was before everything shattered. She stared into the flames. And who were you? A husband? Father? That was sufficient. They sat in silence. Then Luna spoke, her voice low. I lied to you. Samuel glanced over, waiting. I wasn't just fleeing from soldiers. I was traded. A prisoner. My own people surrendered me, said it was a gesture of peace. Mixed blood, daughter of soaring eagle. Useful but not worth protecting. Samuel didn't speak. I spent 8 months in a fort, she continued. They called me leverage. When negotiations failed, they abandoned me in the snow. I was nothing, not Cherokee, not American, just forgotten. Her hands clenched around the blanket. I despise them, all soldiers, chiefs, men who make promises, and leave girls like me to die between their politics. Still no response. She looked up at him. Sometimes I think I was born only to be bartered. You weren't, Samuel said, voice steady. She let out a bitter laugh. How would you know? Because you're still fighting. Their eyes met across the fire. Something unspoken passed between them. Then Samuel leaned forward, staring into the flames. There was a man named Jackson Reeves, he said. We were boys together. Road trails, fought the war side by side. He rubbed his chin. After the war, he turned outlaw. Attacked a stagecoach I was supposed to guard. My wife and children were passengers instead. He sat back, weary. I watched the smoke rise. Luna's breath caught. You saw it happen? Too late, he said. By the time I arrived, there was nothing left. He paused. I tracked Reeves across 3 territories. Had a clear shot once. Couldn't take it. He just smiled and said, they were cargo. Cross. You can't protect cargo forever, Maya whispered. He's after me. Samuel nodded. Not for you, for your father. You're the bait. Silence again. Luna asked softly, do you wish you'd killed him? Samuel hesitated. I don't believe in easy killing, but some men don't deserve breath. She looked down, her hand resting on her knee. Slowly, Samuel reached out and placed his hand over hers. Rough, scarred, calloused. She didn't pull away. I used to think, she whispered, that no one understood what it meant to be discarded by those who should have protected you. She looked at him, but perhaps I was wrong. Samuel nodded once quietly. Perhaps we were just waiting to find each other. The fire burned low. The night deepened. Their hands remained joined in the quiet, not as a promise, but as truth. The decision was made at dawn. The sky above the mountains was a bruised purple, still caught between night and morning. When Samuel saddled his last horse, a powerful, black stallion named Thunder, the animal had been with him for nearly 12 years through war, winter, and wandering. Selling him would hurt more than any bullet ever had, but he did it anyway. He rode Thunder down the mountain trail to the small trading post on the edge of Silver Creek. The settlement was barely a cluster of buildings: a saloon, a general store, a livery stable, and one old church that hadn't heard a sermon since the war ended. Yet even here, eyes followed Samuel as he entered. Men leaned off porches. Women quieted their children. The name Cross still meant something, even after all. These years, when Samuel emerged from the stable an hour later, Thunder was gone, sold to a rancher heading west. In his pocket were silver coins and a signed note from the town's banker, collateral against Samuel's own property. He had wagered everything: horse, home, and the future of Bear Creek Ranch. By the time he returned to the cabin, snow flurries had begun falling again. Spring was taking its time. Luna was waiting by the fire when he stepped inside. She saw the absence: first, no reins in his hands, no familiar hoofbeats behind him. "He sold him," she said. He didn't deny it. He set down a bag of supplies on the table and removed his coat. "I made arrangements," he said. "We leave tomorrow night. Colorado Territory is about 4 days south if the weather holds." She stepped forward, voice rising. "You sold your horse and mortgaged the land. I gave what I had to buy us time," she whispered. "You built it. You carved names into the walls. This is all you have left." Samuel met her gaze, steady and firm. "I once thought that too." He moved past her, pouring coffee into a tin cup, then paused, his back half turned. "But homes are just timber, just earth. I can build another." She stepped closer. "Why would you sacrifice everything for me?" He turned now. The fire cast shadows across his face, not harsh shadows, but warm, softened by something old and sacred. "Because I already lost the ones I loved," he said quietly. "Because when I heard you whisper in that snow, I heard their voices too. And I knew if I walked away again, I'd never stop hearing them." Her throat tightened. "You don't even know if I'll survive out there. I don't need to know." He set the cup down. "I only need to try." Silence stretched between them. Luna blinked quickly, then looked away, pacing toward the window. Outside, wind blew across the treetops. She saw the edge of the barn, the place where Samuel had buried his family beneath pine markers. "You said once that spirits favored it up here. They still do." She turned back. "Then why leave?" He stepped forward, voice lower now, almost tender. "Because maybe it's time to stop living among the dead." A long breath passed between them. And then slowly, Luna stepped forward. She rested her hand against his chest just for a moment. Not a kiss, not a promise, but something just as powerful. Later that night, while Samuel slept in the rocking chair near the fire, Luna walked to the beam in the center of the cabin. Her fingers brushed over the names carved there: Clara, Anna, Luna, and beneath it, with the tip of her knife, she etched one more word: alive. Because that was what Samuel had given her: not pity, but the chance to live and to be more than what the world tried to use or discard. The storm might still come, but now at least they would ride into it together. They reached the Colorado border by dusk on the 5th day. Samuel had been cautious, guiding them through back trails and wooded valleys. The route was treacherous, and they moved mostly at night, avoiding roads and any signs of civilization. The farther south they traveled, the more Luna seemed to breathe. Again, like the mountains were finally releasing their grip on her lungs. But danger had never stopped hunting them. It came on the wind like smoke. They were less than 6 miles from safe territory when the ambush struck. Samuel heard the sound. First, a faint crack of branches in the trees. He turned too late. Gunshots rang out. A flash of blue bandana in the trees. Luna screamed. Men on horseback thundered down the slope. Samuel fired twice, dropping one, but it was over in moments. They took Luna, left Samuel face down in the mud, blood trickling from a gash on his scalp. By nightfall, he had tracked them. Camp sprawled in the ruins of an abandoned mining town. Stone walls broken, windows shattered, a place once full of hope, now ruled by lawless ghosts. His men had set up fires and tents, their rifles leaning against crates of stolen goods. And in the center of it all, tied to a wooden post, bruised but defiant, was Luna Reeves, sat in a camp chair across from her, one boot propped on a barrel. A half-spent cigar hung from his teeth. His grin was crooked as ever. "You know, I never thought I'd catch you clean," he said. "But here we are." Luna said nothing. He leaned forward. "Your father will come for you. And if he doesn't, the cowboy will." Her jaw tightened. Reeves chuckled. "I never could figure that one out. What's she to you, Cross? A debt? A distraction? Or something deeper?" Samuel stepped out of the shadows. "She's not yours to question." Guns cocked all around the camp, but Reeves waved a hand, amused. "There he is. I told the boys you'd come." Samuel ignored the rifles aimed at him. "I'm not here to bargain." "No." Reeves smirked. "Because I've got a fair offer. Hand over Soaring Eagle and she walks. I don't know where he is." Reeves stood, kicked the chair aside. "Then you're both dead." That night, before the duel, Reeves allowed Samuel one final word with Luna. They spoke under torchlight, guarded by two men with rifles. Luna's wrists were raw, her lips split, but her eyes still held fire. "You shouldn't have come," she whispered. "I always was stubborn. They'll kill you." Samuel smiled faintly. "You think this is new for me?" She leaned forward, gripping his hands. "I promised you something once, that I'd do anything. Just don't leave me." She paused, breath catching. "I meant it then. Mean it now. Just live, please. I don't want you to die for me." He touched her cheek, his thumb, brushing away dirt. "I never truly lived at all. Not until I pulled you out of that snow." She tried to speak, but her voice cracked. He leaned in, forehead resting against hers. "I'll keep my word. Won't leave you. Not again." The duel was held at dawn. The whole camp gathered around the main street of the ruined town, a dusty stretch between two crumbling buildings. Samuel stood on one end, Reeves at the other. No seconds, no rules, just the law of lead. The sun peeked over the mountains. A hawk screamed in the sky. Then they drew 2 shots, a pause, then a third. Samuel stumbled backward, a dark bloom spreading across his shirt. Reeves collapsed, lifeless. A bullet through his heart. The crowd scattered. Luna ran to Samuel as he sank to his knees. No. Stay with me," she sobbed. He groaned, gripping his side, blood seeping through his fingers. "You promised." She wept, pressing her hands to the wound. "You said you wouldn't leave me again?" "I'm trying," he rasped. His eyes fluttered, the world fading in and out. Luna tore off part of her dress, pressed it hard against the wound. "You have to fight. You can't die here. Not like this." Samuel opened his mouth to speak, but coughed, the taste of iron rising. She held his face in her hands. "Stay with me, Samuel. Look at me, right here." He blinked, focused on her. And then, faint but firm, he whispered, "I told you I wouldn't leave." His breath slowed. The world tilted, but he didn't fall. Not yet. The mountains turned green that spring. Samuel Cross spent 7 weeks in a cot, wrapped in silence and pain. The bullet from Jackson Reeves had missed anything vital, but not by much. Fever gripped him, loosening only when Luna whispered old Cherokee songs beside his bed. She fed him broth with shaking hands. She changed his bandages, soaked them in herbal mixtures. She stayed through every night, and slowly he began to live again. News traveled quickly through Silver Creek and beyond. Samuel Cross had killed Jackson Reeves, that he had crossed battle lines for the daughter of Soaring Eagle. Some called him foolish, others whispered he was in love, but none denied it. The ghost who had once lived on the mountain had finally chosen to stay. One morning, as the sky turned pale over the ridge, Samuel stood for the first time on the porch. The world was quiet. Then he saw them. A dozen Cherokee riders emerged at the tree line, silent, still. At their head stood Soaring Eagle. He carried no rifle, no spear in Liege, dignity, and something heavy in his eyes. Luna stepped outside. Her breath caught. Father and daughter stared at each other, time suspended between them. No words, no movement. Then Soaring Eagle stepped forward slowly and pulled from a leather pouch a carved bone pendant, a wolf. Smoothed by years of wear, he held it out. Samuel stepped down, took it. Soaring Eagle nodded, not in submission, not in thanks, but in understanding. Then he turned, and by dusk they were gone. But what they left behind was more permanent than tracks in the snow. They left peace. 2 years passed. Bear Creek, once a place of ghosts, now bloomed with rows of corn, squash, and white-petaled daisies. That Samuel tended by hand. The cabin was rebuilt, sturdier than before. The barn stood strong again. Luna had opened a schoolhouse by the river. 3 benches, a slate board, and a wood stove. Children from scattered ranches and tribes came to learn. Some days she taught in English, others in Cherokee. She made sure they remembered both. Samuel rarely went far now. He'd spent his mornings tending the garden, in his evenings on the porch with a pencil in hand, journaling in silence, encouraged by Luna's gentle insistence. One dusky evening, a small girl with braids came running up the hill. "Papa!" she cried. Samuel smiled as she launched into his lap. Her name was Clara. She had her mother's eyes and his quiet way of watching the world. She smelled like dust, pine, and wildflowers. "Easy now," Samuel chuckled. "You nearly knocked the porch over?" She giggled, curled against his chest. Luna stood in the doorway, watching with that smile that still made him forget every scar. She joined them, sitting beside Samuel, her arm wrapped around his shoulder. He held his daughter, held Luna's hand, and looked out over the land he once believed would bury him in grief. Now it breathed with color, with joy, with love. That night, long after Clara had fallen asleep and the house had grown still, Samuel opened his worn journal and wrote by firelight. "You once said, 'Don't abandon me. I'll give you whatever you desire.' But what you didn't know is that you had already given me everything. You saved me from silence, from grief, from a life already buried. I thought I pulled you from the snow. But truly, you brought me out of the cold." He closed the book, leaned back in his chair, and let the quiet settle in. There was nothing left to run from, only something to hold. Thank you for journeying with us through snow, sorrow, and salvation. The story of Samuel and Luna, where love didn't come easy, but came real. If this tale touched your heart, reminded you that even in the coldest places love still rises, then don't ride off just yet. Subscribe to Frontier Hearts, where every week we bring you unforgettable romances born in dust, danger, and devotion. Where bullets missed, but hearts didn't. Hit that subscribe button. Ring the bell for your next tale from the frontier. Share. This story was someone who still believes in love that endures. Until next time, partner, ride true, love deeper.